Listen, on Valuetainment, I've interviewed billionaires, Mark Cuban, Magic Johnson, Worthy, Gloria Allred, Robert Shapiro, Jordan Belfort, all of these different characters we've interviewed, but I've never had an interview where so many Valuetainers said we need a part two, and that was when Michael Franzese and I sat down. We did this interview called Highest Paid Mafia Boss Tells the Truth About the Life. It got millions of views. If you go on YouTube right now, you type in the search word, Mafia interview, and you saw for most views, it's the most viewed interview ever on the topic of Mafia on YouTube. So this time, on our part two, I asked them a little bit more specific questions, many of them that you asked me. And the questions were, John F. Kennedy, who killed John F. Kennedy? Was the Mafia involved? Was the mob involved? What was the role they played, right? We also asked about Jimmy Hoffa. People want to know, where is Jimmy Hoffa buried? And another question that was asked is politics dirtier today than it was 40, 50 years ago when they were doing what they were doing? You'll be blown away by his answers. This is a Patrick Bet David First, part two, with Michael Franzese. Enjoy it. Do you miss the mob lifestyle?
You know, I'd be lying if I say I didn't at times, but people ask me all the time. They say, do you miss the money? Do you miss the power and all of that? To a degree. I mean, look, it's great when you have anything you can want at your disposal because you got enough money to take care of it. I had my own jet plane. I had a Lear 25A. I had a Bell helicopter. I had a couple of big automobile agencies that I owned, so I drove whatever car I want, and basically had homes all over the country. So yeah, that's nice. But you know what I really miss? I miss the camaraderie that we had with the guys. What was so attractive to me about that life is, hey, when you come in, it's a brotherhood. Don't ever worry about your wife, your daughter, your sister. We got their backs wherever you go. If somebody hurts you, we got somebody to back you up. That's very powerful, very, very powerful. And I miss that kind of camaraderie that I had. So, I also nice, going into the back room. I want to tell you this, for those of you that saw Goodfellas, Henry Hill, he never walked in through the back kitchen of the Copacabana, I can tell you that now. But I did many times, first with my dad and then later on with myself. It's nice to go in and get a ringside table and be treated that way. So to say I didn't miss it, I'd be lying.
Give me one of the craziest experiences you had just because you had clout being who you were, parties you attended, people you were with. What was a social life like when you were at the peak of your game?
Well, people cater to you all the time. There's a fascination with that life, Patrick. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe the way we carried ourselves at times. I don't know. But people wanted to be around us and they wanted to treat us right for the most part, especially in social places like clubs and restaurants and places like that. Crazy experience I had. I go into a place one night and I had reservations, a fairly new place. And I get there, and they didn't know exactly. They knew my name, but they hadn't seen me. And I said, Michael Franzese, I'm here with three people, and we want to sit down at a table. And they said, Michael Franzese, he's here already. I said, he's here already? I said, well, show me who they are, I go there, my hand to God. It was two FBI agents sitting up. They used my name. They didn't know that I was coming into the place that night.
You gotta be kidding.
They used my name. So they see me and I said, all right, let them stay there. It's okay. We'll sit in the back. And they wanted to get up. But that, stuff like that used to happen.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you think somebody today can take that game to the highest level like it was before? Or with today, as many cameras and stuff that's around, that it's not possible to get it to that level?
I don't think so, because the other thing is law enforcement, they're too sophisticated. They got too many weapons. There's too many informants on the street. I'll give you an example. Back before the RICO Act came out, we got sentenced, 10 years, 15 years. Anybody can do that. You do half time, you do a little bit more than that. Any guy on the street can do a 10-year bid. Today, okay, they grab that same guy like they did with Sammy the Bull, and they put him in a cell and they say, listen, get used to it, because here's where you're going to spend the rest of your life if you don't cooperate.
Do you think that's a good thing they're doing?
Well, listen, I want to make this clear for those that are listening. I in no way will glorify my former life. It doesn't deserve to be glorified. And the reason is this, Patrick, more than anything else. I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally devastated. I don't mean hurt, I mean devastated, including my own. Now, not my wife and kids, but my mother, my father, my brothers and sisters. Our life was an absolute disaster because of my father's involvement in that life. And it's the same across the board for anybody. And any lifestyle that does that to families and innocent people is an evil lifestyle. And so I will never glorify it. for that reason. Now, I don't talk about look, I was one of them. I'm just fortunate to be where I am, so I don't badmouth anybody in that regard, but it's a tough life. And it'll never be the same because of that reason. What's happened here now is guys on the street, after they got locked up, they become more fearful of what's going to happen to them from the government than they are from their own people. And that was the key. That's how they won.
Interesting. So the answer would be today would be very difficult to get it to the heights that you guys had in the 80s.
Absolutely.
Because of all the different technology that the government and cops and all those guys have in place today. You know, everyone's watched the movie Jimmy Hoffa, whether it's the first one played back in the day. Sly played a movie called Fist. I don't know if you remember when he played the movie Fist.
Oh, yeah.
And then obviously Jack Nicholson did what he did when he played
Great performance.
Great performance. So what really happened with Jimmy Hoffa? There's a lot of conspiracy. Knowing what happened with him.
I get asked this question. It's the number one or two question I get asked all the time, no matter where I am. I could be in the Far East and they're asking me that question about Hoffa. That's how popular it is. But, look, he did get on the wrong side of people. When he came out of prison, he was told to lay low and just stay back. And he refused to do that, didn't want to give up his position. There's no question he was taken out by my former associates. Now, the question is always, where is he buried? That's what everybody wants to know. I can tell you this, he's not in the Meadowlands, that's for sure. New Jersey, the stadium, he's not there. And they will never find Jimmy's body, never. Now, I had nothing to do with it, but you hear things in that life. But I will tell you this, if you remember maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, a guy in prison writes a book and says he knows for sure where Hoffa is buried. And he leads the FBI to the place, allegedly. They dig it up. Now, I had answered this question 1,000 times over the years, so all of a sudden I'm getting tweets and I'm getting emails and texts. Michael, maybe you were wrong, they're digging it up. This guy says, he's going to identify. I said, well, let's wait and see. They never found his body. The guy was smart, though. He sold a lot of books, by saying that. They'll never find Jimmy's
So when you
body.
say they'll never find him, what does that really mean? Because in my mind, let me tell you where my creative mind goes. Let me take my creative mind, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. When you tell me they'll never find him, it's either a body went through a recycling machine, either the body was chopped up, either something happened where it's mathematically impossible to find it, burned body, something like that, where it's not buried. Is that the direction you're going?
Let's put it this way. If you wanted to find his body or try to find his body, you'd have to look in a very wet place.
Got it. And how deep is this wet place?
Pretty deep.
Pretty deep.
Pretty deep.
Got it. Okay.
Now, and I got to tell you something. I know that for a fact.
100%.
100%.
Do you know location?
Well, I know the general area.
Got it.
And actually, it was really interesting that a friend that I hadn't seen for a long time came out of prison maybe 2.5 years ago. And he recorded a tape that I have in my possession. And that tape spells everything out because he was with the shooter that I happen to know very well. And he laid it all out. And people have been trying to get that tape from me for a long time.
Wow. Now, can the government come to you and say, look, since you know what happened, you got to tell us or do this? How's it they know 100%? They can't, right? Because at this point, you don't have to give any of this information out.
No, I don't have.
So you're gonna be buried with. You're gonna go home with this information. No one's gonna get it out of you.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, because but you never know. Let's see what happens.
You never know. For the right price, if we do a movie, maybe we'll make a movie out of it and tell the story. Did you ever sit in a meeting and you saw a guy that went a little bit overboard with talking, and next week or the following day the guy was dead? Did those types of things happen a lot?
Not a lot, Patrick. I want to clear this up too, and I think this is something, I get asked this all the time. Look, it's a violent life at times. You're part of the life, you're part of the violence. There's no question about it. But murder in that life was taken very seriously.
It was taken very
seriously. You couldn't just go around rampant killing people. I don't like this guy, I want to kill him. A made guy had a lot of respect. And if that guy was in trouble, first of all, the only one that can order a murder was the boss. He had to sanction it. You couldn't do it without his okay.
Not even a made man or a capo. It has to be a boss.
It has to be the boss. And there was a lot of discussion about it. It wasn't that, hey, this guy's got to go. Okay, go get him tomorrow. That's the end of that. No, it was taken very, very seriously because remember, the life is built on respect. When you earn your stripes and you come into that life, you're a respected guy. So if something you did wrong, well, they're going to make sure it was wrong. And then if you violate the oath, you're going to pay the consequences. But it was something taken very seriously. A lot of people think that we just went around and random killing people and killing
that's what the
people on the
movies tell you,
street.
though. The
That's
movies
what the
make it
movies
seem
say.
like that, yeah.
I mean, I certainly didn't witness that in my lifestyle.
You didn't witness that in your
Not
lifestyle?
random stuff like that.
Random.
No.
Random.
Yeah, it was taken very seriously.
By the way, Michael, when the Pistone thing happened, do you remember it when it happened?
Oh, absolutely.
How many people did that take down? How many people did he take down?
God, I believe over 100. It was a big. I mean, it was bad.
How do you do that for 6 years undercover? How did he pull that? I still don't understand how that can happen. Because even prior to that case, he was doing some stuff in Milwaukee. He did some stuff in Tampa. He was a New York kid himself. So how did people not know who he was for him to go undercover for 6 years?
It shows you that the security we had, or certain people had in place at that time, wasn't very good, because it should have never happened. It should have never happened. And look, I knew Lefty, and I knew that crew, not great, but I knew them pretty well. They just slipped up. They slipped up.
6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. I mean, they did a background check, but it's part of the problem of that life. You get a guy like Lefty, or you get some of those guys that are really not earners, big earners, and you get somebody that's earning, can put a few bucks in their pocket, they get a little sloppy. They don't look that far back. And I'll tell you, I had that experience too. Okay, I get contacted in a minute. It was a huge case. They called it shadow boxing. I get contacted by a guy that was with Muhammad Ali. The FBI took him out of prison and put him in this undercover operation, along with an FBI agent that went undercover. His name was Victor Quintana. And he allegedly was a drug dealer at one point in time. They cleaned up his act, but had a ton of money, wanted to get into the fight business. So they come to me. Can you introduce us to Don King? I'm with these people for 8 months, okay? All the while, they're recording everything that I do. I had like 83 recordings on me. I take them finally through Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton was a gun for hire. I worked with him a lot, right? And I make Al Sharpton set up a meeting with Don King to bring these two guys to meet King. So we go there, and first I check out. The FBI had set up a bank account. They had $15 million in a bank in the Midwest. The FBI set it up.
Yeah.
So I bring them to King. We're in King's office. I go in there first. I said, Don, let me tell you something. I know these guys 7 or 8 months. They're high rollers. They're driving a Rolls Royce. We went to Florida together. They want to meet you. I said, but I don't know them past that. I said, so when we talk in here, everything's got to be legit. Don't say anything wrong. Everything legit. Let me keep looking for them. And the meeting went great. Bottom line is, they were asking for more money to continue the operation. The FBI said no, because after a year, they still couldn't do anything. And then the whole thing fell apart, and we found out later that it was an undercover operation. Sports Illustrated did a huge deal on it. But 83 tapes, they were never able to nail me on it. They refused to prosecute, because I never, thanks to my dad, I never said anything on the tapes that were
could you tell who was an undercover or no? Like, was there could you read them or no? Some of these guys were very well trained.
You know what? He was well trained. And I'll tell you, we used to play racquetball. And he used to tell me, I got my back hurts all the time. He was wearing a Nagra tape recording at the time, those big things, not as sophisticated as today. And I never patted him down, because we were I liked him a lot. You know what? Now we're friends.
Today?
Yeah. He retired from the FBI.
No.
Yeah, but he's a great guy. He got, we got to like each other so much.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. He's a great guy. Great guy. I like him a lot. He's living out in, I think, Arizona. Great.
Wow.
He's got a ranch. Terrific guy.
Let me ask you, when Joe was doing what he was doing, Donnie Brasco, when he was doing what he was doing, did you ever meet him? Did you ever
I did.
Oh,
Yeah,
you did?
I met him.
Was it an easy, just not a big deal encounter with him?
Yeah, because I never did business with those guys.
Got it.
Really. It was just a thing. We were at a security session for all of pro sports, and they had a panel. It was me, Joe Pistone, some other FBI agent. When we got through the question, I said, Joe, you act more like the mob than I could be the agent, you could be the mob.
Honestly, I felt like it.
Yeah, he's so in character. Till today.
Till today.
Am I right?
I said to myself, here's what I asked Mario afterwards. I said, Mario, let me ask you, who acts like he's a mob more, Michael or Joe? Mario says Joe walks around like he's part of the mob.
He's still in character.
He's in character today.
I know. I say that to him.
Oh my gosh.
I said, Joe, you could fool me now.
You could fool me. You fooled me when I was sitting with him. You know, I interviewed Clint Hill. Okay, I don't know if you know Clint Hill. He was the Secret Service agent under 4 presidents, and he was a main Secret Service agent for Jackie Kennedy. And I asked him a lot of different questions, and that till today, if you go on YouTube, you type in JFK assassination, or you type in Clint Hill, it's the first video that pops up. It's getting a lot of commentary right now. with Clint Hill. I said, listen, you know, so many people don't believe the story on what happened. And one, people don't believe the story of the angles. Well, no, it's this guy. No, this is who did it and that who. Forget about that part for a second. I'm not trying to ask you, you know, what angle was it and what's the real story. Here's what I'm trying to ask you. When the Kennedys were coming up, his father was not the most straight. You know, he was a, you know, Joseph Kennedy, he was a big part of the market manipulation. I think when Roosevelt hired him to bring him in and say, listen, what do we need to do here? And they came out with fingerprinting for licensing. The guy came out with SEC. So he was very much involved in 100%. Knowing how to manipulate the marketplace. He was involved with the mob based on some of the stories you read about. Strong personality. So then you read and say, well, the mob helped Kennedy get elected. I don't know that. I'm asking you. So my first question is the answer to that yes? And two, once Kennedy got elected, the follow-up is, it's been said that once he got elected, they tried to distance themselves from the mob to look like they were good, so nothing would happen. The mob got upset about it, and when they got upset about it because they couldn't fulfill their commitments they made to the mob said, we got to do something about it, and they went about doing what they did to hire who they hired, to shoot him, and then et cetera. When he walked off, the mob killed him. Now, this is some of the stories. Obviously, a lot of this is conspiracy, but one of the best conspiracies to read about is Kennedy. People are so fascinated by it. Having said that, what do you know about the JFK situation there?
Well, understand, my father is through that whole era, and many of the guys that I knew were through that whole era. So all I ever heard, and that I know to be true, okay, and there's no upside in me saying this. I'm not writing a book about it, nothing. But there's no question that Joe Kennedy was involved with it. He was a bootlegger.
There's no question.
No question.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that somebody wanted to kill Joe Kennedy during those times because I heard that he was robbing money, wasn't doing the right thing, and his life was spared. Okay?
This is 40s? This is 30s?
This is in the 40s, 50s,
okay.
During that era.
Got it.
He was a bootlegger. You're not a bootlegger unless you're dealing with us guys. That's it. Okay, no question also, okay, that through his father, John Kennedy we wanted him in the White House, and he was a connection as far as we were concerned. So yes, through Chicago, through Louisiana, they did help him get elected.
They did help
Absolutely.
him get elected.
Union votes and so on and so forth.
You know about this.
I know this for a fact.
Okay, got it.
And now, the government's never going to want anybody to know this. They're going to call me a liar and all that kind of stuff, but that's the truth, Patrick. And as far as the assassination, I mean, come on. Did Jack Ruby come out of nowhere? I mean, he had all of a sudden these mob ties didn't mean anything. If you had mob ties with me, they would want to say it all over the world. Oh, you're connected with the mob. All of a sudden, Ruby, who was connected with the mob, now they're saying he wasn't, you know? They never want it to be known that the mob had a hand in that assassination because it makes them look horrible. Government doesn't want anybody to know that. But, I mean, I've heard that consistently throughout my whole tenure in that life, all the time. You know, Giancana in Chicago and
So when he got killed, you're saying the assassination is linked back to the mob?
Yes. Now, again, it's been said, yeah, it's not true, he's a liar. I have no upside in saying this, other than this is what I know to be true throughout my whole time in that life. I heard it from my father, I heard it from everybody that I know that was in that era. I was there, I was younger, obviously. I mean, I wasn't coming up at that time, but it was shortly after. I mean, I got recruited in the 70s. It was a couple of years after he was killed. So that story was fresh, no doubt.
So let me ask you, as dirty as politics was back then, how dirty is it today? More or less?
Patrick, I have never, now understand something. Yeah, did I see them, when we were on the street, we understood the government a lot of times crossed the lines with us. We got it, but you know what? We were criminals. So in a way, can you justify it? I don't think so. I don't think the government is ever supposed to act illegally. Okay, they're supposed to abide by the law. We were criminals, we broke the law, but they're supposed to use the laws effectively and properly to get anybody. That's my feeling. But you know what? All right, we were criminals and they crossed the line every once in a while. Okay. I have never in my lifetime seen the level of corruption that is going on today in the political arena.
Come on, Michael.
Patrick, I kid you not.
More today than before.
Hunter, absolutely. And at a level that I can't believe. I mean, look, I've experienced, this is my life experience. You gotta understand, I've been indicted 5 times. I've had 2 federal racketeering cases. I've had 2 state racketeering cases. I've been in front of the Supreme Court on constitutional issues in my dad's case. I've been in front of the appellate court so many times. I've been more grand juries than you can imagine. This has been my life. I understand it. I know the law. And I am telling you, I've never seen the law violated by people in power like I'm seeing now. It's to a point where I can't even watch it anymore. It's terrible because it's bad for all of America. Look, we cannot let our political authorities cross the lines of what's legally correct. We can't let them do that because it's a threat to everyone at that point in time. And I'm not being biased. I have many friends in law enforcement, many friends, and they're honest, and they'll tell you straight out, we don't approve of what's going on. Retired FBI agents that I know now are sickened to what they see now.
Wow.
I mean, come on, look, even Comey, what's going on in his book tour, the things that he's saying that are coming out of his mouth, it's an embarrassment to the FBI, in my opinion. Because there's a lot of hardworking, honest, legitimate agents that do their job. And a guy like this, in my opinion, is tainting everything else. It's terrible. It's terrible. I've never seen this level of corruption, and I'm being honest.
What can we do about it? What can be done about it?
It seems to be so out of control because people are not aware. They don't understand this. When you allow the government to cross the line, it doesn't only affect the people that are crossing the line, it affects everybody.
Yeah.
Because if they do it with one person, they can do it with another.
No doubt about it. Michael, what age did your dad become a mobster by? What age did he become a made man or get into that life?
The oldest living man in America, my dad, he's been a made man for over 68 years. So he was in his 30s.
33 when he became, so 32, 33 when he became a made man.
Correct.
Now, does that mean he wasn't involved in mob life prior to that? Because you don't just become a made man your first year. Was he part of it for about 10 years or so?
My grandfather was not a made guy, but he was very respected by a lot of made guys.
Got it.
He just didn't want to be that.
Got it.
My father was one of, he had 3 brothers. They were all kind of street guys, but my dad was the only one that aspired to be part of that life. My dad was an amateur boxer. He was a tough guy, street guy. And he was recruited by the mob, and he wanted to be a part of it. And so he went through the thing and took the oath like me.
Michael, I think what would be very interesting is for us to do something with you and Sonny, you and your dad. If we sat down and we did an interview there, that would be a whole different story because he's still, based on what you're telling me, he's healthy, he can still talk, his brain works the same as before, and he can still process issues. That'd be a very interesting person to be talking about.
Well, remember, he goes back to the days of Luciano and Costello.
Oh my gosh.
He'll even tell you about Capone because he was younger then, but he knew Capone came out of New York.
So he knows he did stuff with Capone?
Absolutely. Well, he knew him. I'm not saying, I don't know exactly what he did, but he knew him. I asked my dad, I gotta tell you this. My dad was, he got so much publicity in his 60s. Now, he wasn't the main guy around, okay? There was a lot of guys doing it. Columbo, everybody was around. But for some reason, they targeted my dad. And I got to tell you this story. So I went to him one time. I said, Dad, why you? There was a lot of guys around. Why did they pick you? He said, my mom had passed away 5 years ago. And he said, I never wanted to tell you this. I don't want to disrespect your mom, but now that your mom has passed away, I'm going to tell you. I said, what? He said, I was dating Marilyn Monroe. Kennedy fell in love with her, Bobby Kennedy. He was the Attorney General at the time. She made him understand that she was in love with my father. From that point on, Robert Kennedy targeted my dad because of the Marilyn Monroe, went after him like crazy. Now, sometimes my dad will, I'm wondering, okay, Dad, you're trying to make, but it made sense. I said, Dad, you telling me? He says, I swear to God.
So your dad was with Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah, and he got a little bit more graphic when he told me the story. I'm not going to repeat it here. But yeah, and then, I'm starting to think, and I said, where did you meet her? Now I start questioning him. He says, I met her at the Store Club. That was the hot place back then, right? Costello had a piece of it. And I said, okay, tell me how it happened. He'd tell me the whole setup and everything else. And because Hoover wasn't targeting mob guys back then.
That's right. He was a friend because you had information on him on the inside.
I had information, and he was bisexual, and he got caught, and blah blah blah. So he never went after guys because they held it over his head.
He actually said there is no mob, is what he said.
He said there is no mob, right? But Kennedy was a different story, and he targeted my dad for that reason. You know what? Sometimes I think my dad, but I believe this one. I absolutely believe it because I put it two together. I did my little research. It was true.
So you can brag. I mean, it's pretty impressive to be able to brag that your dad hooked up with Marilyn Monroe. Let me tell you, that is impressive. I got to know next time. I got to get your dad the first issue of Playboy magazine and send it to him and say, look, here's a reminisce about who you used to be back in the day. So what a story, by the way.
Well, let me tell you this.
You know what? I love for him to tell that story. I love to hear him telling it.
My dad's a great storyteller. And I want to tell you this. He has never done an interview in his life.
He's never done an interview in his life.
So if we did it, it would be an absolute first. 101-year-old mobster, the oldest living guy, a legend in his own right, has never did an interview, never said more than 5 words to the press. That was it.
And rumor has it your dad went through a lot. I mean, he really he was a brutal guy when it came down to it. He didn't hesitate for a second.
No, my dad was. He's a dying.
I've read numbers about it. The number is pretty up there. He doesn't have a small number.
He was the last of a dying breed. But I'll tell you one thing I respect. My dad, they can put him in front of a firing squad. He's dying with his boots on. They'll never get him. He'll never say a word. He'll never give up that life. He took that oath seriously.
Would you live the life all over again?
Wow, that is a tough one. The answer would be now, because I'm a guy of faith now, and I've turned my life around. I can never go back to that because I know that I did a lot of things that I regret during that time. But take that away, would I want to go back and at least have that experience again? I'm being honest, and I might get ridiculed for this, but I think I might. To have the experience. Because look, I learned things in that life that were invaluable to me throughout my life. And if you take away the bad stuff and just put me back in that environment around my guys and some of I think I might, Patrick. And again, I hope I'm explaining this right, because
you're gonna have 50,000 young kids right now go become mobsters.
No,
Michael.
no.
You gotta say the right way here.
No. I
Next
don't want
thing
that.
you know, Valuetainment produced 22,000 new mobsters in the world.
No. Let me make that clear.
Let's give the disclaimer as well.
Let me make that clear. I said it's an evil life. I said you're selfish if you put your family through that. You're going to end up in prison or dead, one of the two. Government's got it all, and it's morally wrong. I mean, there's no question about it. But look, there was some perks in that life, that I've enjoyed. I got to be honest with you. Now, the price you pay as a result of the short time that you're going to have those perks is terrible, because you're devastated for the rest of your life. So it doesn't make sense. I speak to a lot of young kids. I speak to gangbangers. I go into detention halls. I have an influence over them, obviously. And I tell them straight out, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life, or you're going to die. It's one of the two things. And they'll say to me, but Michael, I saw you in Goodfellas, and they had the money, they had the power, they had the girls. I said, yeah, but did you watch the whole movie? Or did you just stop in the middle? I said, who got killed? Who went to jail? Who became an informant? Whose wife left them? Whose kids suffered? Why don't you see that part? And you know what? They don't. They only focus on it. They don't realize it's very short-lived. And in the end, you're going down. And so please, anybody listening, parent, don't get upset with me. I speak to these kids and I tell them the truth. It's a bad life. Don't ever pursue it. Don't ever make the mistakes that I did. Okay.
Michael, what would have happened if you became an entrepreneur? What would have happened if you went into the business route and you applied the same skills that you picked up?
Well, I like to think I would have been successful. Look, I had a lot of legitimate businesses also.
You actually had a lot of things going on with, you had stuff going on with dealerships, you own all these different things with cars.
Patrick, I bought a Mazda agency when you couldn't give a Mazda away.
I remember that, I remember reading
because
that.
Because the Wankel engines were exploding, you couldn't give one away. And I built that into the biggest agency on Long Island as far as Mazda was concerned. And it was a lot of work, and I had to do things differently, but I was able to build it. I think I had a head for business, I had a knack for it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not the smartest business guy around, because there's a lot of things in business I don't enjoy doing. But there were certain talents that I had that worked well for me. And I always tell people this, when you're in business, I don't think it's a good thing to micromanage, because nobody can do everything good. But here's the deal. Do what you do best and delegate the rest. And then be a good watcher of these people and make sure you get the most out of them. That's how you do it.
I got comments from a lot of people saying, Pat, I love the interview. I mean, I learned so much. But some also asked me and said, Pat, why are we interviewing mobsters on Valuetainment? Well, the reality part of it is, if you go on patrickbetdavid.com, I list the top 100 movies every entrepreneur must watch. You know what's number one on my list? Godfather. You know why? Because it's all power plays. If you are not a little too paranoid in a world of business, someone's going to take you out. So again, Whether you liked it or you didn't, comment below. I'm curious to know what your thoughts were about what he said with Jimmy Hoffa and John F. Kennedy. And if you haven't watched the interview, go watch the actual interview, part 1. It's fascinating. We'll put the link below as well. And for some of you that like content like this, I did a video titled 25 Lessons You Can Learn from Mobsters. If you haven't watched it, you may want to go check that video out. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.